The story of Olinda. For as long as anyone could remember, Olinda's family had the sweetest songs of all the birds. Olinda's great-grandmother had been personally chosen by the royal court to wake the prince each morning. So sweet was her sound. And in his younger days, Olinda's grandfather's call was so admired that he had been asked by Lady Spring to fly far and wide, announcing her arrival each year to all the other birds, plants and animals. And Olinda's mother, father and 3 brothers and sisters were known throughout the whole forest for their wonderful harmonies and blissful melodies that kept any listener, bird, animal, plant, why, even at times human beings, entertained for hours. But Olinda, well, Olinda was a bird who could not sing. From the moment she was born, her nest was filled with so many beautiful voices that it wasn't until she was old enough to fly all by herself did she even try to sing a tune. And when she did, oh dear, well, it was such a tiny, odd little squeak, nothing like the sweet sounds of her family, that she decided she should probably never try that again. And remembering that strange squeak of a sound, Olinda made sure she always kept her beak shut tight. Except for when she would soar off into the great blue sky all on her own. There she would duck and dive with the winds, and when she was sure no one else was nearby, only then would she open her tiny little beak as far and wide as she could, just to see what sound would come out. Sometimes it was a high-pitched whistling sound that seemed to soar above the clouds. Sometimes it was a deep rumbling sound that seemed to rise up from beneath the mountains. And sometimes it was a sound unlike any other that Olinda had ever heard before, and this sound made her especially curious. You see, it wasn't a bad sound at all. It was just strange and so different to anything she'd ever heard before anywhere in her forest home. Yet while it sounded odd to her ears, when Olinda sang her song, her heart was happy. So Olinda spent every moment she could exploring this new sound coming from her body, until one day, when she was so completely lost in her song, she forgot to check if anyone else was listening. Her sister had come looking for her and heard the most unusual song long before she spotted Olinda. When she realised the sound was coming from her own sister, she burst out laughing. "Olinda, what on earth is that?" she cried between giggles that were fast becoming hysterics. Olinda's beak snapped shut tight, and her feathery face flushed hot, crimson red as she dashed away to find somewhere to hide. For a long time after that, Olinda didn't practice her song, and soon, after an even longer time, she forgot about it completely. One day, a special messenger arrived at the nest of Olinda's family. He had an invitation for this most famous and loved family to perform their sweet harmonies at the upcoming spring ball. Well, for the next week the nest was full of great excitement and preparation. Plans were made and costumes were sewed amidst the steady hum of singing practice. Each of the brothers and sisters and mother and father knew their part well, and Olinda knew that so long as she smiled and stayed silent, she would be allowed to come. When the big day finally arrived, the family flew off together to the royal nest, a huge collection of delicate twigs and soft leaves woven together beautifully with golden thread. Here they were greeted most formally and seated at a finely set dining table as the guests of honour. And when the time came to sing, Olinda stood up with her brothers and sisters, her mother and father, and smiled with her beak clamped firmly shut, while her family serenaded the guests most sweetly. Oh, when they had finished, the crowds clapped and cheered in delight. All of the crowd, that was, except for the Queen herself. When the cheering died down, the Queen stood up and gestured to Olinda to remain standing while the others were to sit. Olinda's feathery cheeks flushed red and hot as the Queen sternly addressed her. "We haven't heard your song yet. Don't you know it is but a waste to visit the Queen and not offer your song?" For a moment, Olinda closed her eyes and her beak, desperately trying to imagine some other place, any other place than this one, right now. And then she remembered. She remembered her own special place where she had soared fast and free. And as she imagined herself ducking and diving with the wind, once more she opened her beak just a little and let out that most unusual sound, strange to the ear and soothing to her heart. And it was then, as she opened her beak wider and wider, that something truly magical happened. Every bird in the court that day later told their own version of events. Some say, when Olinda sang, they saw angels dancing above. Some say they heard pure love in the air. And some could find no words to say that would describe what happened. But all that really matters of that day was the shine in Olinda's heart, for she was singing her song and she was happy.